And we are back with another Monday preview. We have cats and bolts once again because we're going back down to Florida, friends. We are facing the Tampa Bay Lightning. Rod, thank you so much for coming back on again so quickly.
Thanks for having me. I always love talking hockey with you, as you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get into the Lightning. Still pretty competitive and doing fairly well, although not the greatest start in the beginning of the season, but we're only a couple of games in. But for those up here in Chicago or new to hockey that maybe haven't been paying attention to the Tampa Bay Lightning, there's also been some significant changes, I would say, through the Lightning within the past couple of years. Who are the bigger pieces for the Lightning going into this season?
Well, first of all, you mentioned the start. John Cooper is the longest tenured coach in the NHL. You're probably aware of that.
Yes.
And their 0-2 start. This was the first time they've been 0-2 under John Cooper since he's been there. So, but the one thing about the Lightning fan base, they don't panic because they've been to the top of the hill enough. They realize that it's still October. And you're asking who are the key pieces. You'll notice that they've acquired over the last couple of years, they've brought back Yanni Gourde, Ryan McDonough, guys that you're used to, not to mention the usual suspects. I mean, Braden Point, Brandon Hagel, Victor Hedman now is the captain. This will be his second season. Is that so? It's the usual suspects. Like I say, it's a veteran team. It's a veteran fan base. It's a veteran coaching staff. There's just always this sense that the Lightning are going to figure it out, and they will. They did last year. I don't know about you, but I'm really enjoying these division by division predictions because number one, I had Tampa picked to miss the playoffs last year, and their fans and media all year rubbed it in my face. I'm like, I'll never do that again until I have reason to believe that the Lightning are not all that. They're all going to be all that. I haven't seen anybody pick them to miss the playoffs this year, and quite a few have actually had them picked to finish first. I don't know what you've seen, but that's what I've seen.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that. I feel like everybody has one team that they kind of either they don't know like where to put them in their division predictions, or they just don't have like as much faith. Like for me, it's always the New Jersey Devils, where I'm like, I can't 100% get on the hype train. For my dad, it's the Washington Cap. I feel like everybody's got one where it's like, I don't know. And then we get proved wrong.
I know. Well, it's funny you say that with Washington. I went back and looked at last year's top 5 finishers in the regular season. It was Winnipeg 1, Washington 2.
Yep.
And Vegas 3. But I don't normally think of those teams as being upper echelon. But anyways, you asked me about Tampa Bay, and they not only did they make the playoffs and made me look like an idiot last year, they ended up finishing higher than the Panthers and got home ice in round 1, but then didn't really show up in the playoffs, bowed out in a 5-game series. So they weren't that active in free agency. I'm sure. I mean, you're very thorough in what you do. You probably looked up what they did. The only name that they signed was Pontus Holmberg, and he scored yesterday the winning goal in the Lightning victory at Boston. But they weren't that active, But they did make a pretty big splash at the trade deadline. So under Julien Brisebois, what we're seeing is he's shown the penchant to trade away draft picks. He doesn't care. He literally has said, I want players. I don't care about picks. Proven players. I don't care about picks. And they've made their splashes at the trade deadline the last several years under Julien Brisebois.
Nice. Jumping back to John Cooper really quick, because I feel like, I want to say like trade deadline towards the end of the year, every single year, John Cooper's name comes up with, is he going to leave Tampa? Are they going to find a different head coach? And maybe it's just because I'm an outsider perspective. I don't see that. Like, I don't see the reason that they would have to get rid of him. I mean, the man's been incredibly successful. Like you said, he's the longest tenured coach. Do you think he's staying and this is kind of just sort of fluff pieces that people are writing every year? Or do you think there may be some underlying truth in the future because this keeps coming up?
You know what it's like. You know more about the Chicago Blackhawks than anybody else because you live there and you follow them every day. That's the benefit of living in Florida. I follow the teams every day. And you see things, not just the games, but you see the coverage outside the games. And so John, like, he was going into the last year of his contract this year. So all of this talk in the summertime, even in last year's playoffs, is that maybe John Cooper was going to be on the way out. I'm like, I don't believe that, but you like where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So I didn't ask around or anything, but I just paid real close attention to what was going on. And this summer, John won an award. It's for Tampa Bay. It's like Citizen of the Year. They call it the Tampa Bay Silver Sneaker Award. And when he got up and received it, he goes, "I've lived in 19 cities in my hockey career. I don't ever want to live anywhere else than Tampa Bay." And the place went crazy. I'm like, he's not going anywhere. And then he ended up signing this extension. But who would know that he said that, or that he even won that award, if you weren't following the Lightning day to day? You know what I mean? And by the way, my brother graduated Notre Dame College with him, same grade 12, class of 1986. So we've known of John Cooper for a very long time, from Prince George, BC, and the head coach of Team Canada at the Olympics. He's a solid guy. You can trust what he says. He's not going anywhere.
That's what I was figuring. And I think maybe, there was extra talk this year with so many potential head coaching vacancies throughout the league. I feel like this past summer, there were more open spots. And so it was kind of, who can we throw around the rumor mill that may be on their way out, going somewhere else? And there were a couple of ones where it was like, John Cooper's coming to Chicago. And I'm like, John Cooper is not coming to Chicago. The man's staying in Tampa. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And Chicago, I mean, never say never, but I think this deal with Cooper was like 4 or 5 years. But I'm just saying, Chicago is a coveted place. Anybody would want to coach there. But it's just, John has had so much success in Tampa Bay. He's a beloved figure there. My God, you win in Tampa Bay, you're good. Ask John Gruden and guys that have won there with the football team. You win a championship in Tampa, you're good. And they're always in contention. There's just no reason for him to go anywhere. And he gets treated really well. He's said that many times. So it's funny you say that, because I get really, really tired of the rumor mill and the conjecture. I hate it. I know a lot of people love it. They love reading all this, but to me, it's just gossip, and it's a waste of time. So I got really annoyed when I heard it, and 99% of the time, it doesn't come true. It's just a waste of time.
Exactly. Keeping on with the start of the season, Tampa's been a little feisty the beginning of the year. We had the game against Florida. There's been some extra fights to the start of the season. Do you see this as kind of just like a one-off of like the Battle of Florida? There was a lot of residual anger from the postseason last year. Or do you think that this may continue, that they're coming in with a bit more spice, a bit more aggressiveness this year?
Let me say, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question, because the brawl for it all, as we're calling it, 2 Saturdays ago in Sunrise, came 2 nights after a pretty feisty game in Tampa between Florida and Tampa. And when that was a night after they'd met in Orlando, that was 3 straight preseason games against each other. And you're right, it did go back to the playoffs last year. And I'm trying to remember who it was that Aaron Ekblad, it was at Gensel. I tell you what, if Matthew Tkachuk had played in this preseason game here 2 Saturdays, they'd still be beating the hell out of him, because of his late hit on Gensel in game 3. I've seen it. They've met in the playoffs 4 out of the past 5 years. They've met in the playoffs. This has been building, So I guess my point was, what happened that Saturday night, I didn't think was going to happen. It doesn't ever usually happen.
Right.
And everybody's asking here in Florida, will this carry over into the regular season? Everybody hopes that it does, if you like that style of play. But it's similar to Four Nations Face-Off. The 3 fights in 9 seconds on Valentine's Saturday night, USA versus Canada. We all remember that. Hagel versus Tkachuk. I had friends around Florida going, "Oh, can't wait for the gold medal game, man. It's going to be 10 times as many fights." No, there wasn't one. So you don't know. You don't know. All I know is these teams really dislike each other. And as far as the way Tampa got, as you saw, fined $100,000 for their role in that brawl. John Cooper, $25,000. He didn't even make a statement about it. They made their statement by going in there and injuring the Florida Panthers to the degree that they did. And I just think, Angela, they're kind of tired of people, idiots like me, counting them out. You know, I took that as a sense of, we're still the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know, that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised by it because I feel like we kind of know, like, the Panthers versus the Ottawa Senators, it's always going to be at that, like, high caliber every year. You know, everybody's going to end up in the box. And so I was unsure just because it was the beginning of the season. I'm like, is this residual for all of the real bad hits Ekblad had during the postseason, or are we just hitting everybody? Because we're just hitting everybody now. That's become the new Chicago thing. So, like,
they got to do something. They're not scoring.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. If we're not going to score, might as well just hit people and make it entertaining. I'm all for that. But very good to know. Yeah, that was some very exciting highlight footage after all those brawls.
The thing was, it was, you know, I broadcast major junior hockey in Canada for 20 years and 90s and 2000s, and that kind of stuff went on all the time. I wouldn't even, this was actually worse than any of that. Like they would get all the gloves and sticks and teeth and cleaned up, and they'd drop the puck and it'd be 5-on-5 again. Right. They'd brawl for minutes, and then they would clean it all up and then drop the puck and do it again. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, enough is, I like fighting. This was way over the line. The really funny thing is, my neighbor Fish has been after me for months to take him to a hockey game. He'd never been to a hockey game in his life. That was the first game he's ever gone to. Now we can't wait to go back. I'm like, Fish, they're not all like this, okay? So he had the time of his life, but I'm like, it's not Saturday night fights. We'll probably be waiting another 30 years before we see something like this again.
Yeah, it's definitely not always like that. Okay, jumping to one of my favorite players on the Tampa Bay Lightning, a former Blackhawk legend. How integral and important is Brandon Hagel's role within the Lightning going into this season?
Absolutely massive. And, you know, speaking of broadcasting junior hockey, I called his games in junior, so we love him. Been watching him a real long time, and still can't believe he's not a Blackhawk anymore. Maybe you can tell me why that is. I mean, he was continues to set records. I think he had 5 assists in a period last year as a Tampa Bay Lightning record and tied an NHL record. How integral is he? He's not much taller than you. When you talk about dynamite comes in small packages, he's just become everything. I don't know how a guy like that becomes available. Kudos, you know, not to stick a dagger in your heart or anything like that, but he is in the fabric of this hockey team. That's what more can I say? I can't see him ever playing for anybody else. Mind you, they would have said that about Stamkos too, but he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
That's so good to hear. That's so good to hear, because that one definitely hurt out of the burning to the ground rebuild that we began a couple of years ago. That one definitely hurt, especially because that was more pick heavy on our end. So it wasn't, I mean, we're still not seeing the complete result just because Oliver Moore came out of that trade and this is his first year kind of out of college. So we're not even seeing the full reward of that trade yet. But that one definitely, I was like, what do you mean Brandon Hagel's going away?
Did you go to the game when they beat Utah?
No, I did not. I went to the crazy Montreal game, but not the Utah one.
Okay. Well, I had a chance to talk to Spencer Knight after the game, and I just love Spencer Knight. And he was very upset that he didn't come in and win that game in Sunrise. But I love Spencer Knight, and I love that he's the number one there, and he got the win against Utah. I'm always going to be checking the score sheets to see if Spencer Knight played and how well he played. Fiery competitor. And yeah, I know that you want to talk Lightning, not Panthers, but there's Panther fans that were very sad to see him go. So we tend to get attached to players, don't we?
I could hear them yelling Knight during the anthem during the home opener. I was like, this is awesome. No, he is very, I want to say his first game at the United Center, half the building already had Knight jerseys.
Good.
And they were like, nope, this is our Knight in shining armor. This is our guy. I think partially they were just excited to get rid of Seth, and so they just hopped on the Knight bandwagon, but he is adored here in the city. So we love Spencer. And it definitely helps. One of my favorite prospects that's kind of like in the AHL system right now is one of the goaltenders. So it was nice to see Spencer come in. So I know Comesso won't be entirely rushed during his development. Like he can stay down in the minors and be completely fine.
Yeah, Spencer's ready to go now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He proved that. I felt so bad for him for the Montreal game. I was like, he stood on his head. I was like, this could be 8-2 if it was anybody else in net.
There's going to be a lot of nights like that, I'm afraid, for him. Yeah.
Okay. This one was actually Krusty's question. Because I told him that I was coming on. We were talking Lightning. What is your confidence level kind of in the Tampa D-core going into this year?
I think they'll be fine. I mean, any blue line anchored by Victor Hedman is going to be fine. They've made some changes back there. But we're in an era now where you better get used to change.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's not the strength of their team. There's no doubt about that. The strength of their team is in goal with Vasilevsky and Jonas Johansson, and as good a top-end forwards as there are in the NHL, but they're good enough. They're good enough. I'm not going to go down 1 through 6, but I'll say, Hedman didn't play that night here. He didn't play any of those preseason games against the Panthers, but he's still all that. I don't care what anybody says. I think he's now the Lightning all-time games played leader. It's not the strength of their team by any stretch, but they're fine. They're certainly above average.
Love it. Love it. Out of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who do you think is going to be the biggest surprise for this year?
Well, I'm excited to see them. I haven't watched all of their games yet. I'm excited to watch their game tonight. If you're talking about a young up-and-comer, Ethan Gauthier, I've had my eye on for quite some time. He's been playing in the rookie tournament the past few years, had a pretty good preseason with the Lightning this year. He's the son, if you remember, Denny Gauthier, former Calgary Flame defenseman, Arizona Coyote defenseman. Ethan Gauthier was a star, led Chicoutimi to the Memorial Cup in Canada last year, Canadian junior. Ethan Gauthier would be a name that people probably haven't heard yet. But he's a guy that the Lightning have been grooming, and he's got the NHL pedigree of his dad. And that's the one guy I got my eye on, Ethan Gauthier.
Nice. Taking a look just to see. I've watched this kid. I watched this. I was up in, it was Moncton versus Drummondville a couple of years ago. And Dawson Mercer's brother was in net. And yeah, he was the only one that kind of stood out. It was a massive, like 11-1 lopsided game for Drummondville, just knocking Moncton out of the park. But no, I definitely remember him from
He's a legit star in the making, but they're very slowly bringing him along. So if it's not this year, it'll be down the line.
Well, I feel like when you've got such a competitive team, like you can afford to, we need to bring all of our young kids up because we don't have a ton of talent. You guys are kind of stacked. So I feel like that's a thing that happened, or that's kind of like a normal thing for the younger kids.
Oh, the Lightning definitely know what they're doing at the draft table. There's no doubt about that. They haven't had a lot of picks the last few years. But they favor an older team. We talked about that earlier on in this broadcast. So that's why, I could say, Kucherov's going to have a big year. Gensel's going to have a big year, but we all expect that. You know what I mean? Yeah. As far as any young guys, they're few and far between. That's a guy to keep an eye on.
Perfect. A couple more for Tampa Bay Lightning. What is your prediction we don't have to go fully the year, but do you think they're going to continue to have like a slower start or kind of turn it around at a point? Because I feel like Tampa's also definitely one where they know when to turn it on to make it to the postseason, and then they will turn it on closer to the postseason.
That's been their MO, more so the Panthers than the Lightning. Like as soon as Tkachuk got hurt last year, the Panthers just put it in coast the rest of the way. Lightning really burned themselves out, I thought, getting to 100 points last year. As I said, they got home ice in the playoffs, but they didn't last long. This injuries to the Panthers are really screwing up my predictions, because you can't tell me that Barkov and Tkachuk missing them long term isn't going to affect the regular season standings. Because I had Florida 1, Tampa 2, Leafs 3, Montreal 4,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ottawa 5th, claiming a wild card spot. I still think Tampa Bay is going to be top 3. I do. Florida, Tampa, Toronto, all those guys from about U.S. Thanksgiving on were in the 1, 2, and 3 spots the whole way. They just rotated, and that's what I think is going to happen again. Although it's just interesting that a lot of people are expecting the Leafs to have a down year, and that would not break my heart. This is like the first year that we're going into a season that not everybody's picking the Leafs, Toronto media, to win the Stanley Cup. So maybe they won't even be that hard. What I'm saying is I just can't in my heart have the Panthers number 1 with the injuries they have. Wouldn't shock me at all if it was the Lightning.
No, that makes perfect sense. And then final question for the Tampa Bay Lightning. What do you think is going to be the biggest hurdle for them? Is there a position that they're weak on, a mentality thing, if we can beat X team, then we're okay? What is going to be the biggest hurdle for them?
I think it's the health and age of Vasilevsky in goal. Andrei Vasilevsky. He's getting up there. And it was a couple of years ago that he had the surgery on his back that kept him out until December the 1st. And they held the fort until he came back. But then they played him so much last year down the stretch. He hasn't been playing a ton. He's been 50-50 with Jonas Johansson to start this season. I know we're only a week in, but it's Vasilevsky. Because when you talk about the top goalies in the world now, you don't hear his name. You don't. At least I don't. And I was a goalie, so I pay fairly close attention to this. You hear Sergei Bobrovsky, you hear Connor Hellebuck, you hear Jake Ottinger. You don't ever hear Vasilevsky's name anymore. And, would be very tough to replace. So that's one thing I'm keeping my eye on the most for Tampa Bay.
Dang. Very fascinating. Well, Rod, thank you so much for coming on. Once again, very excited for this matchup. Thanks for talking hockey.
It's always exciting when Chicago and Tampa Bay get together.
So, guys, we have Gary, one of the co-hosts from Royally Quacked, to talk about the Los Angeles Kings. Gary, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to go on another podcast and talk hockey with fans. Because number one, hockey, I'm a fan of the sport. I mean, the Kings are my favorite team, but I love talking about hockey in general. So,
absolutely. So to get started, for our listeners that are either new to hockey or haven't really kept up with the Kings since the rivalry, who would you say are kind of the bigger pieces of the Kings to know kind of going into this matchup?
Well, I mean, obviously, 20 years in, Anze Kopitar, it's his final season. And I don't know if they're maybe Sidney Crosby might be the other one I might think of that is highly respected as Anze is. And him having his last season, it's going to be sad, I guess. I mean, because I've had 20 years with him, and it's been incredible. That's probably the biggest story. But really, if we're going to go anywhere, we need a couple of the young guys to become what the Kings expect them to be. So, and that would probably be Quentin Byfield and Brant Clark. Very two important pieces. The only way we get past the first round is if those guys realize their talent. So, I mean, that's one of the most important parts of it. In inclusion that the team plays somewhat like they did last year, because we had players that played career years. I mean, our goalie, Darcy Kemper, was up for the Vezina Trophy. And he's had an up and down career. And I mean, obviously, if we're in the hockey season just a little bit now, and it's not looking pretty right now for the Kings. So, but then again, when you overturn 25% of your starting lineup, I mean, you got to expect hiccups early on.
Right.
So, but go ahead.
No, that was going to be my next question, because it looks like it's a not less than ideal start for the Kings within the first couple of weeks. At what point are you concerned, or are you kind of confident that, the first couple, like, this is to be expected and then they'll turn it on later in the season?
Well, we had a little bit of times like last season that this happened. I mean, but this was a little bit more of a turnover, and our off season wasn't what, for the second year in a row, the fans weren't happy with what the moves the Kings made. But last year, it really worked for us. Unfortunately, this year so far, it really hasn't worked. I mean, we lost a key member of our defensive core, Gavrikov, to the New York Rangers on the money I thought we would spend for him. So I'm only have to assume, because I've never heard the reason why. I only hear what people think, and most of them are thinking he's Russian. There's a lot of Russian areas in New York. He'll be playing with some Russians that he's played with in the past.
Right.
And we lost him, and we replaced him with two guys, which kind of makes, if they play well, we could be better. I don't think that's really come to the realization as we see it right now. And then the key offensive guy we picked up, which was obviously an ex-Duck, Corey Perry. He is one of those guys that you hate him when you're playing against him, but you'll love him when he's playing for you, because he does a lot of things that make things happen. And I know you guys didn't get to see a good portion of that, but you think about it, how many times he's been to the Stanley Cup here in the last 5-6 years. I mean, I think it's all except for when he was with Chicago, right? Tampa Bay, now two times with the Edmonton Oilers. I never knew. I don't know if you heard that him and Drew Doughty were friends. Drew's been trying to get him to come to the Kings for 2 or 3 seasons already. And I didn't know they were friends. I mean, the guy who squirts water in Jeff Carter's gloves, who takes a stick away from someone, that irritant that probably generates a penalty so we get a power play. I can't wait to see him play for the Kings. I've always respected his game. I didn't always like it, though. So, and I think he's a difference maker.
And he played serious minutes for Edmonton last year and was a key piece in their playoff run. So, and again, that's what you guys, what he does in the regular season is just gravy, but he's a solid playoff piece.
Yeah, you get Corey Perry for the postseason.
Oh, he had 10 goals, I think, in the playoffs last year, 19 goals during the regular season, but 10 goals in the playoffs.
Yep.
Yeah, right up there with Bennett, right? So, and he's 40 years old, and us old guys, we got to appreciate a guy who can play past what anybody else plays and still be competitive. So we may get to see him come in, and maybe he's that catalyst. They need something to get them pushed back to at least the defensive part of the game they were lacking last year, or lacking this year compared to last year, because I think we were the number 2 defensive team in hockey last year, and pretty much been a staple of the Kings for the last 6-7 years has been defense. And I don't think we've had it. I mean, our one win was at Vegas, and what was it, 6-5?
6-5,
yeah. So it's a year. I'm not even sure what to expect, to be honest with you, because with 25%, like I said, the 25% change we've had, is it going to work? If it isn't going to work, is this going to get, because of Anze retiring? They haven't signed Kempe. I know they've talked about doing it before Christmas, but how many 200-foot hockey players are there in hockey that are really 200-foot hockey players? And we've been blessed to have 2 of them. Anze Kopitar, obviously, for the last 20 years. But Kempe's a really good 200-foot player. And, obviously with the salary cap going up and, they were expected to get him for $10 million a year, which I still think that would have been a bargain. I say sign him, but I think he's asking 12. But then again, the only thing that hurt that was Connor McDavid signing a 2-year, $25 million contract with the Oilers. So that kind of lowered the expectation of salary.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously Kaprizov got $17 million.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's kind of, and he, as you stated, he'll be able to kind of dictate what he wants. I mean, there's not a lot of players like that in the league. So,
well, I mean, I don't know what you guys have read into that, but I read into that he doesn't believe they can sustain the team they have. So he's going to give him 2 more years to get the act together, and then 2 more years.
Yeah, Connor, yeah.
He's going to go get his $20 million or whatever it's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be in the $20 million range. And young up and coming teams, you guys have a lot of young talent on your team. The Ducks have a lot of young talent. Montreal has a lot of young talent. I could see him moving to one of those teams with the idea of being that difference maker and leader that they might need to push them towards a Stanley Cup. So,
yeah. And well, I mean, with Kempe, I mean, he's not maybe Krill money, but he's not too far behind either. Correct? So, I mean,
yeah, I agree with that. But a lot of people, they don't see 200-foot hockey. I mean, we did it.
I understand. I get where you're coming from on some of that, and it's points and flash, and they figure. But yeah, I mean, that's a complete player, and especially for the Kings, you're going to be losing one next year. That void would be huge without him.
Yeah. Well, that's where Byfield comes in. He and I think he's played decently. He's not close to a point a game. He actually was over 50% last night against Pittsburgh with his faceoffs. And you're going against probably maybe the best faceoff guy hockey ever saw in Sidney Crosby. He's got to get there. Clark's got to get there. The coach has got to believe in him. If not, we're going to have to do, some kind of retool rebuild after this if it's not working. And I am concerned about that. But then again, it's always nice to win, but only one team can win every year.
Yeah, that's true. And again, it's very early. I guess I've got one question for you is the health of Darcy. Is he completely healthy or?
He's out right now. I didn't hear what the report was. I know they pulled up Eric Portillo, who was the number 1 on our AHL Ontario Reign team. But the one bright thing, we're talking about goalies now, is that we have 2 of the probably most awesome young guys in our system. I mean, we have Carter George, which, I mean, he played one AHL game last year and had a shutout. And even though he plays on a terrible OHL team, he was second team all-star. And then our other one went to, I think it was at Western Michigan, who's never won the Frozen Four, led them to an NCAA championship as a freshman. I mean, we've never had this kind of goalkeeping depth that, especially this young. I know it takes time for goalies to grow, but God, I mean, we do have hope in the future. I mean, you guys obviously have Bedard, and you guys have been drafting pretty well. And I know my son was on. I actually listened to the episode. I think it was Monday, right?
Yeah,
last Monday, and they have such a ton of talent, young talent on that team. They're going to be scary good, which doesn't bode well for the rival podcast that we have. Because right now I've been pretty much winning for 4 or 5 years,
right?
And he's been suffering, and I only can see that my future it's going to be reversed. And I think we might be the only podcast that I know of where it's about crosstown rivals.
Yeah.
But we're not mean about it. Sometimes we stab at each other a little bit, but
that makes it fun. That makes it
definitely fun.
The other things about the Kings, they, I know you guys talked about the Ducks and how they're down the middle really strong. Well, the Kings aren't that strong down the middle in their minor league system, at least right now. I mean, you got Byfield, he's a hope, but Kopitar goes down, and I guess we have Hellenius and Turcotte. And Turcotte's played pretty well. It's taken him a lot of years to become what they hoped he would be, and I don't even think he's there yet, but he's competitive.
Getting there.
Yeah, but when we go down to our minor league system, that needs to be replenished. And if you ever notice, Mark Yannetti, who's our head of scouting and pretty much who drafts the players, he's always trading down and getting more picks. And they got some guys that can play with that are 6th, 7th round picks. They don't always believe in the first round. Wow. And we're not blessed. I mean, last time we had really high pick was when we got Turcotte and Byfield. I guess Clark was an 8th pick. But, you get those top 5 guys, you're usually getting someone who can play within a few years with you. Yeah. Although it's taken Byfield a little bit longer. But he was 17 when he got drafted. So,
right. And they took their time with him, but they seemed to... And he got a lot of NHL time just basically down on the 3rd and 4th line for a while, right? Before he got elevated?
Actually, they put him up with Kopitar and Kempe and made him a winger. And what he was doing, and he did it well, he was going in the corners and getting the puck. And to me, that they were trying to teach him, if you want to play for us, you're going to have to play two-way. And he went in and did all that dirty work. And I mean, he was okay. Last year they finally elevated him to the position he was supposed to be in, which was center, which, face-offs is his weakness, I think, still. He still needs to get better at that. But he was on the penalty kill. Him and Warren Foegele were on the penalty kill last year. And one thing I think that killed us is they had Kopitar and Kempe and then Foegele and Byfield on the penalty kill, and then they were on. Some of them were on the power play too, and so we go to that 3rd game against Edmonton over there. They just been doing that the whole season. You get tired, so I think that's why they picked up Joel Armia for one, because I don't know if anybody knows these facts, but he was the 4th most minutes in the NHL playing shorthanded last year. So, I mean, see, they were picking up role players because role players win cups. It's not always the superstars that win cups. It's the role players. And you look at the Florida Panthers, and I mean, they got what thought was a role player, and then he was the Conn Smythe winner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you look at up and down their lineup, and they're missing, Barkov, who's probably the best two-way hockey player now in the NHL. He's out probably for the season. And then they're without Matthew Tkachuk until Christmas or past.
Yeah.
And yet they just keep rolling. Keep rolling. So...
And I guess the one player I have to ask about, because
I feel like he's also on my list too.
Well, let's hear it.
Is the one that got away from us, and then finally ended up, and that's Phillip Danault. Has his game changed any? Has there been deterioration in it?
Well,
I love the player, so
if you watch hockey and you know hockey, you would want a Phillip Danault on your team. Now, he came in and for the first 2 years and put up 20-something goals, which something he probably, I don't think, ever did, because he's also another two-way hockey player.
Yes.
And a good face-off guy. So, but last year, I think he only scored 8 goals, but I still think he was productive. And I got to say, when we signed him to that contract, I thought maybe we overpaid for him a little bit. But, I got to tell you, he proved to me that he's valuable in what he does, because I think they actually moved him up with Kempe and
In Kopitar, or?
Well, he took Kopitar's spot.
Okay.
And Kuzmenko. And if Kuzmenko can do what he can do, and he's another guy that has gotten lost a lot. I think we're the 4th or 5th team in the last 5 years for him. And he signed a pretty cheap deal, I think, for a guy of his being on the first line. And if he can prove himself, he's going to get a pretty decent contract. But like I said, we're still early. We're like 5 or 6 games in.
Right.
We've been in the games, most of them, but we're just not winning. And I don't think our goalkeeping has been great, they were pretty good last year. I mean, even the backup last year, he had a great home record. He just couldn't play on the road. I still have hope. But you have to look at what's happening and why. And there's something missing. I wish I could put my foot on it completely. Mm-hmm. I mean, we didn't have Kopitar last night. That probably hurt us, and then Darcy's out and we had Forsberg in. But we were up 2-0, and then they scored 4 straight goals on us last night. So,
that's something that doesn't usually happen to the Kings. I mean, usually you guys can lock it down pretty decently, especially during the regular season.
Well, the funny thing is, I've heard is, if we hit on all cylinders, we could be a Stanley Cup team. I'm saying they're going to win it, but they could be in it if everything fires. Mm-hmm. But we have seen just the opposite of firing. We've had leads. We were up 3-0, I think, on Vegas, and next thing you know, we're down 5-3, score 2 goals, and then win it. I think it was in a shootout, right? Overtime. We should have won the other game. Who were we playing? It wasn't the Penguins. The game before, we should have won that game in overtime, and then we lost in a shootout. So, I mean, we're in games. We're competitive, but we're not in victories. So,
one last.
I feel like I've been asking all the questions. So,
hey, you're excited. It's your first Monday preview coming on. So, final question. I know we talked about kind of different things that the Kings are missing, but if you had to just pick one that is kind of the biggest hurdle that they need to get over, be it a missing piece in the roster, a mentality thing, if we can just beat Edmonton, then we're golden. What is like one hurdle that the Kings just need to, if they can get through this, they can be successful?
Well, one thing I think I'll talk for the season, and then the season they need to be more consistent. Consistency isn't happening. You got to be consistently playing the defense, because it usually leads to offense. Mm-hmm. And I think we've had enough offense. We just haven't had enough defense this year. And I know we picked up Cody Ceci and totally overpaid for him, but I saw notes that we were like a minus 25 in goals with him on the ice, 5-on-5 already in 5 games. I mean, that's bad. But for us to win this season, we have we have to beat Edmonton in the playoffs. That would be the huge thing to do. I mean, we're 0-4 in the last 4 years against them, and you have to look at how many teams have 2 of the top 5 players in the league and that they can make that big of a difference. Those guys are incredible players.
Thank you for coming on. We're going to let you go, but thank you so much for talking Kings hockey with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime you guys want to do it again. Like I said, we're going to have you on ours, and we'll have family podcast.
Absolutely.
It'll be fun.